Hi there, it's Katie from There's No Business Like coming to you this week from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But wait, isn't the 2025 Midwest Arts Expo in September? Well, yes, it is, but I was so excited. I hopped across Lake Michigan a month early to make sure I don't miss a moment at the professional development, networking, or artist showcases. Well, not really. I'm here to see family, but I am having such an amazing time in my second favorite Midwestern state, and I can't wait to see you all here too. It's not too late to register and make plans to see the Pod Squad in the Expo Hall in booth 511. I'll see you in Milwaukee September 15th through the 18th.
Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to There Is No Business Like. My name is Danielle Van Hook, and I'm from the Alden, and today I'm here with my friends, Kevin
Maynard, coming at you from Tallahassee with opening nights at Florida State University.
And Brian
Zelmer from Bardavon Presents in Kingston, New York today.
And you're never going to believe this. That's all of our friends that showed up today. Katie is riding a ferry, which I only will believe is spelled Fairy, and she's literally floating on the back of Tinkerbell across one of the Great Lakes. Who knows which one? Probably Michigan.
I think it's the only one that she's allowed on, to be honest.
Right? Like she'd have to get like a different passport or something.
Yeah.
And I think Josh is like in a cornfield somewhere.
That's actually probably pretty accurate. At least cornfield adjacent.
No, he's painting. So
which is cornfield adjacent because he's in Illinois. So
so that is who we got here today.
Best of the best.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this is a VIP episode. Also, with the note that this is the first time we've ever recorded without Katie, and
I'd say it's going pretty well. No mistakes.
All 30 seconds of it have been excellent. So let's kick this thing off today. I would like to refer back to There's No Business Like social media feed, which I know everybody who's currently listening to this follows, comments on frequently, and just can't wait until there is a new updated post. So over the summer, we, and by we, I clearly mean the one who has it together, Katie, have been posting photos that show joy is the act of resistance, which kind of in a nutshell means like we've all been working really hard on making ends meet with less, right? But we're still showing up and we're still bringing joy into our lives and into the lives of people around us. And it's important to remember that life goes on and that we are the ones who choose if that's still there. So, you know, we've posted about it, but I just want to ask you guys, like, what have you done here on your summer vacation that's brought you a lot of joy?
I had what I would call the most Florida day. There was a day that it was around my birthday. Could have been on my birthday, if I'm being honest. I went to the beach, so like got some beach time. But then I went mini golfing, and at the mini golf place, I held a baby alligator, and then I fed some baby alligators, and played some arcade games, all at the mini golf place.
What does one feed a baby alligator, Kevin?
Freeze-dried chicken. You basically it was more like, it felt like fishing for alligators because like it just like clipped to this little pole and you like hang it over. I've got some photos. I mean, if you're interested. So.
I'm interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would also like to point out that you are wearing long sleeves. They're rolled up, but like, how? It's summer in Florida.
Oh, yeah, but it is like 60 degrees in my office. It's always freezing in here.
Got it.
That's how it was like at my last job. The colder it was outside, the hotter it was in the building, and the hotter it was outside, the colder it was in the building.
That's exactly the way it is here.
All right, so that's definitely our last non sequitur. Brian, what about you?
So every summer I visit my mom and stepdad in Cape Cod, and we just got back from Brewster, Massachusetts, which is on the inside of the elbow of Cape Cod. And we always have a good time. We get some beach time, like Kevin was saying. In our line of work, we don't get to get out in the sun a lot. So it was nice getting some vitamin D. I definitely felt better after that. And I actually took Josh's advice for sun care this year. I did not use any sunblock,
What the
which
hell?
I always get burned,
Base
and somehow
tan.
I didn't this year. So maybe I would think maybe he's onto something.
No, we're not. This is not that kind of podcast.
We have to cut that part because saying Josh is right about anything is a risky game.
Oh, for the
Enjoy
love.
the skin cancer.
Oh,
So.
gosh. Okay, you.
Oh, I don't wear it either, but I'm just accepting it. I don't credit Josh for that though.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I bathe in SPF. Like the higher the better. Please and thank you. I do not have a base tan
We've
and I don't
noticed.
want one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Glowing.
will look
Yeah.
the exact same
Save on electricity.
when you
just
saw
glow
me
all
in
the
New
time.
York to now. Don't change. Don't change SPF. My joyfulness has been rubbing in your faces that I'm currently wearing SPF inside. But like you guys, I also enjoy the vitamin D and I've been to the beach a couple of times. And we at the Alden, we had our summer concert series this year, and the rain was not our friend. No vitamin D that day. But the days that we did have the sun were like some really, like, they were ones for the books. Every 6-year-old in McLean knew that the Taylor Swift tribute band was coming this year. And let me tell you, that day was exhausting and fun.
Those are some great pictures you shared too. It looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah. But like the space definitely wasn't like built with the idea that 900 people were going to come and watch a Taylor Swift tribute, but sure they did. And, it was a great day. All right, guys, let's get into it. So this week I interviewed Kara Hettinger, who is the Arts Education Program Director from the Midwest Trust Center, which is a part of the Johnson County Community College. Much like me, her title of Arts Education Program Director tells you maybe a quarter of what it is that she does. So I hope you enjoy learning a little bit more about Kara, learning about the Midwest Trust Center, and honestly, some of the really incredible and innovative things that she has going on out there that have taken her years to build. Oh, also, I want to add, right before we started talking, she told me that she had just like designed and led the majority of a Kennedy Center Arts Partnership, like 3-day teacher training. And she doesn't even touch on that in this interview. So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Kara Hettinger. I'm the Program Director for Arts Education at the Midwest Trust Center on the campus of Johnson County Community College, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today, Danielle.
Well, thanks so much, Kara. I'm so excited to talk with you and so glad that you found some time in your busy, amazing intellectual schedule to come here and talk with me today. So before we really jump into it, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your origin story, or just like really how you got to this position in the field.
Great. I always knew I wanted to be in theater. Of course, it started out as I want to be a very famous actress. And then you get to college and you start in a theater department where everybody was the actress in high school that was like, I'm pursuing this forever. And so you start to find out other avenues for those passions. And so even in college, I was exploring a lot of like backstage work, stage management work, sound design, directing. And so by the time I graduated, I kind of had a pretty wide lens of things that I thought theater-wise interested me beyond just acting. But shortly after graduating from undergrad, I was working professionally in the evenings, for very little pay on being assistant stage managers and, just kind of getting my feet wet in the field. I needed more work than that. So I was also teaching preschool, and I had always loved working with kids. I had a lot of experience working with kids, but I hadn't wanted to major in education because I wanted to be a professional actor, in the professional theater space. At some point, a couple years after undergrad, the Children's Theater here in Kansas City, the Coterie, I was approached by their education director and asked if I wanted to teach some summer camps. And so that kind of was the start of all of it, because I saw this avenue where I could combine my love of theater with my love of working with kids. A few years later, after teaching a lot of camps and classes for area theaters, the education director position at the Heart of America Shakespeare Festival here in Kansas City opened up, and I was there for 6 years. And then I moved on to Kansas City Young Audiences, where I was also for 6 years. And then I've now been here at the Midwest Trust Center for 7 years, which means I broke my 6-year curse. So
look at you.
So that's kind of it. That's me in a nutshell. I do still like to pursue some directing opportunities and things like that. I do like to be a teaching artist actually in a classroom, not just administrating, because I like to remember the why of it all. And I've been able to do a little bit more of that in the past year than I have been since I started at Midwest Trust. With the pandemic and everything, it kind of made me need to wear my administrator hat fully. And I'm happy to be getting back into a more creative space with at least a little sliver of my time.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is hard to really live in that creative classroom space and then go into the administrative part and not just get sucked into that. Like, so many of us have that creative side that gets us there. And then you're right, you forget the why, or the why gets a little bit more watered down. So that's awesome that you've been able to kind of get back to it.
I think a lot of us who are organized and good at administrative tasks, we get funneled in that direction of being an administrator. But we did start out wanting that artistic practice. And so making ourselves go back and revisit that part of ourselves can help us in the slog of administrative work.
Facts. Thank you for that. So tell us a little bit more about the Midwest Trust Center and the Johnson Community College.
Great. So Johnson County Community College is actually, I believe, one of the biggest community colleges in the nation. And so we're a big, very diverse campus in so many ways. You know, we have lots of trade programs here, as well as a lot of more academic intended to launch you into a 4-year school after you finish your associates here. So I love just, you know, the amount of different types of programs and work that happens here on the campus. But we also have a big push to have a lot of community-facing programs, and our Performing Arts Center, the Midwest Trust Center, is a big part of that. We also have a modern art museum on campus, the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art, and we work with them a lot. And so our two sort of pillars of community-facing arts are a big part of the college's mission, as well as all of the academic focus. So we present about 35 shows a year or a season, and that's our performing arts series. And then in addition to that, we have our arts education series, and that can look like student matinees that schools come to during the school day. It can look like family performances in the evenings and on the weekends. We also have a series called Kids Jam that's on Saturday mornings. That's a free family-friendly music program that's for our youngest kiddos. And then we also do professional development for teachers through a program called the Kennedy Center Partners in Education program. So those are kind of the pillars of what we do here at the Midwest Trust Center.
So I know through our work together that you're the one who programs all of those young audience series programs, as well as the Kennedy Center partnerships. But what other tasks are you doing in your job as well?
So we do a lot of work out in the community. We bring a lot of artists out into schools. So in addition to all of the things that people can come do here at the Midwest Trust Center, we also work with a lot of local artists. And I can say that prior to my time here at the Midwest Trust Center, the program really was focused on those touring artists that would come through this area of the country, which is great. And those artists will also often go out into the schools. We'll do a master class with a visiting artist, and that gives our local community access to those artists that they would never get to have in their classroom if they weren't here performing at the center. And that can come from our education series or our evening series. But since I've been here, and because of my history in the local Kansas City art scene, we've really made a push to work with our local arts community to foster a lot of the local artists in creating programming that is appropriate to go out into the schools, or even taking their programming and kind of next leveling it so that it can be a little bit bigger and be on our stages here at the Midwest Trust Center. Maybe they have done their shows in a theater that seats 100, and our smallest theater is 425. So helping them, giving them space, giving them resources to be able to kind of next level what programming they're doing. So we do some of that here, and then we do some of that out in the schools.
So you've touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to go back. Like, why is it important at a community college to have such a strong young audiences program? That's not something that you typically see at community colleges, and it's clear that it's a big part of what you do, and really sounds like the fabric of the institution.
I think that Johnson County Community College in particular wants our community to feel a sense of belonging when they are here on our campus. And we know that if we can remove that barrier of, oh, college, that's not for me, that's not something that I get to do, simply by making them feel comfortable in our spaces, so that when it comes time to take a class or to enroll in college, that they're like, oh, I used to go on field trips there when I was a kid. I love that place. We want those positive associations from the youth in our community as well as the adults. And we are partially funded by the county. And so we take that really seriously, and we want to provide resources and fun for the members of our community.
And so you also talked about the music program. You mentioned super briefly that it's free, but I know that there's a lot more there that also plays into the placemaking.
Exactly. So right around the time I started here, which was in 2018, I thought to myself, I love theater, and we do a ton of theater in our arts education program. I mean, as you know, children's theater is really guided by children's literature. And so it really ends up that a lot of the shows that are touring through our region for young audiences are theater based. But our adult series is at least 50% music. And so how can we build those future audiences, as well as create that sense of placemaking and belonging for young children on our campus? So I wanted to start this program, this kids music program, called it Kids Jam. And I raised the money for it, and then the pandemic hit. And so everything got put on hold. As we started to slowly come back from that, we did do an outdoor concert on the campus, and that was sort of a test, dip our toe in the water, see if this was still going to work. And so then we did start the program. I think we did the first show in 2021. And so since then, we're about 4 years in on Kids Jam, and we offer 5 or 6 free performances a year. They're always on a Saturday morning. We always have art activities, and there's a gymnastics studio that comes and does a little tumbling area. So the kids who really need to get their wiggles out go and do that. And the other kids come over and do a little art project, or maybe they do both. So that's all happening in our lobby. And then they get invited into the theater. They're usually with their parents or grandparents. I love it. Sometimes I see they'll be like one little 2-year-old, and grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad are all with them. They all want to experience this first concert with them. And they'll be dancing in the aisles. And when Uno Dos Tres Andres was here, there was like a kiddie conga line going through the aisles, and all the parents just spontaneously started putting their arms above them to make like a little tunnel for them to go under. Like, it was magic. So those experiences where families are having an experience together, which is so hard to find those multi-generational experiences right now, and they're having it on our campus. So they're building those positive associations. I want those kids to see our space as a place that they belong. And then that will lead them to thinking, well, I belong in artistic spaces. I can go to the theater, I can go to a concert, I can do all of those things. And in addition to that, if I do decide to go to college, maybe Johnson County Community College is a good place for me to start. And I'm not as daunted by that because I've been there a whole bunch of times with my family.
Oh, Kara, you're making me so happy. I love that. I love hearing all of that. Congratulations. So I want to talk about a different demographic of youth that a lot of us struggle to kind of connect with, and then also to like build a relationship with, and that's teenage audiences. And I know that you've had a lot of success in this area, so I'd love it if you would talk with us about how you've connected some of your other programming to those older teen audiences.
I've been trying to engage teens since pretty early in my career. That was a big initiative in my work at the Heart of America Shakespeare Festival. And so trying to like crack the code on what will make teenagers show up is like a 20-year endeavor here, maybe a little more than 20 years of me trying to like see how can we get teenagers to come to us and experience the arts. So I think my first thing that I've learned that I would share would be, do not set your bar for what success is in the same way that you set the bar for success on a program that's for like 7-year-olds, because parents are making so many of those choices for those young kids, or teachers who in the elementary school setting have a lot more leeway for field trips. And by the time they're in high school, those field trips are really difficult. And so making your program bubble up to be the thing that teacher who might take the teenagers out of the building one time that year, unless it's for sports, that can be really tough. And so set your bar for what success looks like. Like, I don't put a teen specific show in our large theater very often. I don't want to be sad when I don't have 1,300 students at that show. But in our theater with 425 and I have 350, I'm like, wow, we did a teen show and it was a success. The second thing I would say about teen programming is go into it with a partner. So, for example, we did Hotel Elsinore here last fall. That's a show on the Holden and Arts roster with the amazing Susanna Hamnet. It was such a positive experience. But I didn't just book that show and hope people would come. Before I ever booked it, I worked with a theater teacher who is on our advisory committee who I knew liked Shakespeare. And we planned that Susanna would come and do workshops with her students and that all of those students would get to come and see the show. And so before booking it, I knew I'd sold like 75 tickets because those kids were going to get this extended experience. They were also going to get to meet with the actors again. They already knew them because they'd been at their school, but they'd get to kind of talk to them after the performance to kind of close that whole experience out for them. And I would say it's the same with even when I was at the Shakespeare Festival and we built a really successful program called Team Shakespeare. But we didn't, and it's a year-round program for teens. They come once a week and they get really intense training on performing Shakespeare. They get to perform at the festival during the summer. But we didn't start that program until we had a strong teen summer camp that we knew those kids were hungry for more throughout the year. And we had kind of a feeder into the program. So I guess that would be sort of my tips in the teen space. I do think we have something going on here in Kansas City right now that is really exciting for teens and is helping my program a lot, but I don't get to take credit for it, but I am going to tell you about it.
Please.
It is called Teen Tix, and it's Teen Tix Kansas City, branded like that because Teen Tix exists in Seattle and has for a pretty long time and has a successful history there. And so it's been brought to Kansas City by some local Kansas City. They run a magazine here in Kansas City that's arts specific and focused. And so they've decided to bring this program here. What I love about it is capitalizing on inventory that us performing arts centers and our our ballet and our opera and our theater, all of our theaters in town, that we can all gain new young audiences with unsold tickets. So the premise is, I kind of buried the lead here, but the premise is that they get $5 day of tickets. And so they download the Teen Tick Pass onto their phone, and then they get information about what is available for that day, that weekend, and they can buy those tickets for $5. And as a venue, we can decide how many tickets we want to put towards that. So if it's the day of the show and we've got 100 unsold tickets, but we kind of know historically that we will probably sell, 50 of those at the door the night of. So we can put the other 50 towards Teen Ticks, and now we've just filled seats that wouldn't otherwise have been filled with exactly the demographic that all of the performing arts centers are sitting around going, why can't we get young people to come here? And so we're really trying to remove that barrier. Like they even say right there on their website that Teen Ticks KC breaks down barriers that prevent teens from accessing the arts, such as ticket or admission cost, not knowing where to look for events, navigating transportation around the city, and insecurity around arts going if there's no one in their lives already championing the arts. And so I just think we're so lucky to have this here right now. They did a pilot last year. We were one of the pilot sites, and then they've launched everything. They've got their website now. And this next year, there's a ton of arts organizations signed on for this. And to connect it back to what I was saying, as far as, having partners when you try to go into this teen space, that is the other thing that they're doing really well, is they're engaging with a lot of like service organizations and high schools, and they're engaging with the people that already have the captive teen audiences and convincing those adults that teens need to know about this program. And so the teens aren't just randomly hearing about it from some guy. They're hearing about it from their teachers or from the person at that community center they go to after school. So by trusted adults, they're being teens need to be kind of led to the thing. So it's been great. We've also done a couple like special Teen Ticks nights where we do something special. Like we'll have pizza, and one of the actors or one of the creators of the piece will come and give them like a little talk beforehand. So we'll feed them, they'll feel like they got something special. And then after the show, we'll give them a tour of backstage. Again, creating placemaking. They feel like they got like some inside scoop on the venue.
Well, and that's how everybody has done like member events for the last 50 years, or, I'm making a number up. But I mean, that's really taking that experience and tailoring it to this audience, right? Because we're not going to do like past hors d'oeuvres or, some of the other things that we might do, but like pizza and a show for $5, and you get to like meet other teens in the area. Like, yeah, that's amazing. My assumption too is that it's not costing you a ton extra. It's costing you time to plan and food cost. But on top of that, it's not like it's something that's really budget draining.
No, it's a couple $100, like if that. Honestly, I think Teen Ticks would buy the pizza, but I'm on a college campus where we're only allowed to use our catering department, so we have to figure out the pizza. But it's I love what you said about like our member events, because we're willing to put together events for our funders and our members who are paying a significant amount of money. So we know they need that VIP treatment, but we also have other objectives besides fundraising. And those objectives are having audiences. Mm-hmm. And as a field, we're chronically talking about how our demographics are all aging. Ours here at the Midwest Trust Center are too, just like everywhere else. And so investing a couple $100 and a few staff members' time in doing a little reception and a tour afterwards that makes those teens feel special, makes them feel like they belong here. It seems like it makes sense to me. For us in particular, we want those kids to also consider coming to school here. So I probably have the most enthusiastic support of my administration, maybe of all the arts organizations, because that's exactly the demographic we're trying to recruit, not just to see shows, but to go to school here.
Right. And you want members also in the future.
Yes.
And you want those members to maybe have children who come to. I mean,
Exactly.
it's such a really important time to make arts going a part of somebody's life.
The other thing is I get to interact with teenagers when I walk outside of my office door because, we're community college, so a lot of our students are 18 and 19 years old. Now we have a very robust set of programs here. So we also have a lot of, students who are older and returning to school or getting additional training. But like our theater department is mostly made up of 18 and 19-year-olds who are hoping to go on to a 4-year college and study acting. So I get to do stuff with them all the time. And that sort of helps keep me in the loop of what is happening in the teen space and what they might find engaging.
Yeah. The other thing I love about the Teen Tix idea is that you can't do it on your own, and it shows the power of different arts organizations in a region actively working together rather than trying to be their own boats. And so often we're just like, nope, we gotta protect our own, right? Like we don't share, we don't do this, but like making that central hub where it's like they don't need to know all of the organizations to go and look for something to do, and like they're having that experience with you, but then they also might be having a similar, different experience at the opera, the ballet. It's like you're making it work because you're working together.
Right. Like, don't we all benefit if our city has a strong arts ecosystem? That makes people want to live here. That makes people want to go to things here. And so I think for so long and in so many situations, we see the other arts organizations as our competition, because if you buy a ticket to go to the symphony, you're not going to come see the music program we have that night. But if they go to the program at the symphony, that also might make them more interested in the classical program that we're offering next month. And so to see it less as that direct competition and more as we want arts patrons, because we want them across the board. Mm-hmm. We want arts patrons who aren't afraid to go to different parts of the city and see different types of things.
There's also another initiative that you've worked with that I also really want to talk about, and it's with the other arts education program directors in your area creating a unified teaching artist training. So can you just give me like an overall of like where did that come from and what is it?
Absolutely. And it's a perfect segue from what we were just talking about, because that would not be happening if I wasn't working together with 11 other arts organizations. Several years ago, probably during the pandemic, when we were all getting on Zooms with our colleagues to say, oh my goodness, what do we do? I started talking to a couple of my closest colleagues about the teaching artists. And because those colleagues and I started out as teaching artists, it's area we feel passionately about. But we were kind of bemoaning the fact that like a lot of times you don't even know what a teaching artist is when you're in undergrad studying an artistic field. And you don't know that that is a potential revenue source for you after you get out of school. And that obviously not every artist wants to also teach kids about their art form. But I didn't know that there was a way to work with students that wasn't being like a high school theater teacher. And so how could we get more information out about being a teaching artist? And that sort of grew into musings about, oh, wow, I really have trouble retaining teaching artists. I feel like I pour a lot into someone and then they leave Kansas City, or they, go somewhere, or they go into a different field because they can't make a living. Like that's a big message I get from teaching artists is, well, it's great that I can make that nice hourly wage, but I can only make it for 2 hours after school, a couple days a week. So how could we make making a living as a teaching artist a more viable option? And so we just basically decided that we were going to stop seeing each other as competition for the best teaching artists and start seeing each other as the answer to how can you make a full career, and that being by piecing together work from all of these organizations. And that if we all put effort into training them, we would all reap the benefits. That was sort of the brainstorm of it all. And I'm lucky that we have a group here in Kansas City called the Kansas City Metro Arts Education Network. KC, Maine. That group is made up of education directors from the arts and culture organizations throughout the city. And so I put a call out to that group and said, who works with teaching artists and wants to join us in this endeavor to try to expand our teaching artist skill set and numbers. So the first thing we decided to do together was to offer a in-person half-day training. And we wanted to keep it really simple so that it would be accessible to teaching artists who've maybe taught one summer camp, as well as teaching artists that maybe have been doing this for a long time, have an in-school program that's connected to curriculum. Like, we didn't want to leave them out. A lot of us education directors are really aware that, at least in our community, a lot of our strongest teaching artists are actually 60 or older. And so those teaching artists also know, and they want to impart some of their wisdom. They're actually, at least the ones I work with, are really generous and are saying, like, I want to help somebody. Some of them even saying, I would train someone on my program before, I retire. We wanted it to be open and accessible to everybody. And so we had all of the sessions be pretty basic. There was sessions on classroom management. There was sessions on lesson planning, and we kind of divided them by experience level, like lesson planning for the after school and camp space versus lesson planning for the in-school, tied to curriculum arts integration approach. And we had a goal of, like, wouldn't it be great if we could get like 40 teaching artists? And we did scrape together enough money collectively to offer a stipend to the teaching artists for, giving up half of their day to do this. I think it was only $75. It was something around there for a 3-hour morning. Yeah. So yeah, 75, because we were thinking that's about $25 an hour.
Sure.
And within a week or two of opening up registration, we had 60 and decided that that's what we could handle, manage, and pay. And so it was a great event. This was a little over a year ago. We worked with 12 organizations throughout the city. We had them come and have a breakfast, and then we did all of those sessions I just described. And then we did a panel at the end with all of the arts education directors. The goal of that being that they could get to know us, and then maybe remove any fear of approaching us or asking us how to get involved, and give them a chance to kind of ask us more about the types of programs each of us offer. I think the thing that surprised me the most about this wonderful day was the community that the teaching artists needed. We could barely get them into the sessions because they were standing in the hallways, meeting people that do what they do. So much of that teaching artist work is you with 15 kids, or you in a school classroom. And of course, working with teachers is invaluable, but meeting other artists that are doing what you're doing and trying to make a living doing what you're doing, it was just so invaluable. So that event ended, and we knew we had enthusiasm that we wanted to keep going. And we also knew that community was going to be an important piece of that. It has taken us a little while to get to our what's next, because this is a passion project for most of us, that we're doing on top of all the things we are normally doing. And we don't have a ton of funding for it.
Right.
And so we are finally launching our next step, and that is going to start up in September. And it is a conversation series that will happen over Zoom once a month. We're calling it Toolbox Talks. It is being led by arts organizations in the Kansas City community, but it is open to anyone since it is on Zoom. And the idea is that there'll be a theme or a topic for each session, but we are not hiring a presenter to come in and just give them, a sit and get presentation. We are going to make sure that there are a few teaching artists on the Zoom, a few plants that know something about that topic, that it shows up in their work. but we're going to try to lean into the experience in the room and encourage that community that we're learning from each other. Those teaching artists that I just spoke of who may be retiring soon, they will be invaluable resources on those calls. And so this was a way for us at a low cost to start building that community and start establishing our little group of arts organizations and have teaching artists start to see us as a resource for them, not just for jobs, but for training and support and mentorship. We are calling our group the Midwest Teaching Artist Coalition.
Ooh.
So despite being Kansas City, we wanted to say Midwest, giving us a little room to grow. But again, like Danielle, if you wanted to hop on one of these calls, we're not going to say you're from Virginia. You cannot join the Midwest call. We hope to do some in-person trainings for them as well. I'm lucky that with the work I do with the Kennedy Center Partners in Education program, that we're bringing in these national teaching artists to do classroom teacher professional development. So in the upcoming year, I have Paige Hernandez, who I know has been on this podcast before. She's coming to do a week-long residency, and most of that is going to be in classrooms with teachers. But we have one morning set aside to work with teaching artists, sharing her tips and tricks and trying to get another perspective for those teaching artists to show them that it's not just that you could make a life doing this locally, you could make a career and a life doing this nationally.
When you first told me about this, I just thought it was so groundbreaking because I used to work in an arts education, like solely arts education area. And like our TA training was the foundation of everything we did, of everything that we went out and we talked about like, you know, we would never like compare ourselves to other people or put anybody else down, but it was like the reason that our program was better or was great at addressing these certain curriculum topics was because of the way we trained the teaching artists. And like we did it a certain way and it was proprietary and, you know, you had to go through this, you know, vetting process and stuff, right, to even get access to it. And so like the thought of breaking down even some of those walls and barriers and, you know, like directly working with education directors, in some ways it kind of feels like, at least from the world I was in, like you would need a pandemic in order to sort of like create that willingness. It sounds like it's had a lot of the things that you were hoping to get from it, but has also just seeded so many other wonderful things. And like being a teaching artist is lonely.
Yes.
You know, like you don't have colleagues, you don't have like that kind of community that a lot of us have. And I've heard that from so many teaching artists, just wanting to be able to talk to each other about what they're doing and what they're experiencing. But I've also seen teaching artists that like, I mean, they're just giving as people, right? They're the best people, like they're the best of us. And they go and they support each other. If somebody has a gig at a restaurant, like their group, you know, their group is there with them, or, you know, if they're doing a reading or something, like those are their friends. Those are the people going to support them. And so you're also in a smaller way, but still building on that foundation of creating a community in which the arts are valued.
I also think the teaching artists, to loop it back to that, they need support, especially when they're starting out, to figure out how to be a teaching artist. And I mean in some really nuts and bolts ways. Like, how do I, when I'm being paid as an independent contractor, make sure I'm saving enough money, not just for when times are dry, but also for my taxes? Mm-hmm. And how do I write things off on my taxes that are my business expenses? Since I'm traveling to all these schools on my own dime, I'm potentially paying for different types of background checks for each school. And, you know, managing that can be hard. And I've had so many teaching artists, usually very young and early in their career, sit in my office and cry because they didn't understand something about the payment. Maybe they thought they were getting paid the day they did the work. They didn't understand there would be a little delay, or maybe they had a class get canceled, and even though it got rescheduled, that means their payment's coming later. A lot of that stuff can be really tricky when you're, trying to make ends meet with a whole bunch of different jobs. And so if we can find a way not only to get them more work, but to also help them navigate what being an independent contractor looks like, because that can be really overwhelming. And I do think it's the piece that pushes so many of them out. They're like, never mind. I cannot figure out how to do that and still save enough back for my taxes and have enough to pay for my healthcare. And, it can be really tricky. And so if there's anything we can do to help navigate that process, I'd like to do it. Honestly, I wish we could hire more organizations could hire full-time teaching artists to have in their organizations. There are other things they can do when they're not needed out in the schools or teaching a camp, because they're usually very disciplinary artists who also are often organized and smart and all of those things. Until we get to a point where we can hire them full time and provide them with health insurance, we can at least do better about making sure that they know about all the opportunities and resources in our community.
And are you hearing from people that they have been able to make connections and, if they're working for one group in the morning that, they found this other theater, this other group that kind of meshes with what they do, and they can work in the afternoons there, or that they can fill in their seasons of the year differently and make that a little bit more of a fuller time job?
Yeah, we have surveyed that group of artists that came to our training. We've surveyed them twice. Once right after the event, that was very event specific. And then as we were talking about what's next, we surveyed them again about what kinds of events would be doable for them. We have not gotten a ton of feedback yet about from their perspective about how they're specifically working with the different organizations. But I have gotten feedback from some of the organizations that they were able to reach out to artists from that event and set up, interviews before they were doing their camp hiring or their school year hiring and things like that. So we know that the education directors are leaning into that preliminary list. And my hope is through these toolbox talks, we're going to really get a lot more information out of them, not just about what's going well, but what they still need. Because this was one event. We know we still have a ton of work to do. We want them to not see us as competition, but more as a bank of professionals that they can lean into.
So you're never going to believe this, but we've been talking for quite some time, and we're at the end of our interview.
Yes.
And we always ask guests if they could go back in time, perhaps in our podcast time machine, to a time, I think, around the time where you were sort of working as an artist and a teaching artist in all of the theaters and organizations in Kansas City. And we're sort of in that transition of doing that kind of work and into administrative work. What advice do you wish that you could give to your younger self?
Be more present. Mm-hmm. I think that that was such a magical and special time. And I look back on it, and I was in graduate school for much of that time. I was in graduate school. I was working as a teaching artist, I believe, for 4 different organizations simultaneously. And I was still pursuing directing and stage managing professionally. And so the chaos of running from thing to thing, making sure every evening that I had my lesson plans and whatever work for, stage managers and directors do a lot of prep work. And so in the frenzy to get all that done, I think sometimes while doing one thing, I was looking towards what is the thing I have to do in an hour that's different than what I'm doing right now. And so not realizing just how much enjoyment I was also having and leaning more into, it's okay, you know what you're doing. You do not have to stress so much about what you're doing in an hour because you're doing right now what you planned. Mm-hmm. Or you're going with the flow because they're 4 and you're just going with the flow and what you planned has been thrown out 20 minutes ago and just enjoy it. Because I do feel like, when I go back now and go into the classroom, which I've done a lot more of in the past year, I'm always thinking back on those times and wanting to revisit them because they are the why. They are why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And so, I just wish I'd savored it more.
Mm. That's a really great note to end on. And so I just want to thank you again, Kara, for chatting with us today. I've learned a lot, and I think there's been so many really great takeaways from this that other communities or other programs could start to do those initial talks and those initial dreamings of how do we connect with these different parts of our community better. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I feel honored that you asked me to be on the show.
Danielle, thanks for bringing this conversation with Kara to us today. What I really enjoyed about this is sort of this through line of, the idea of more folks and more organizations working together. Like, obviously she talked a lot about the teaching artist training, like those organizations come together. But I also really love this idea of the teen ticks. And it not just being like one organization doing that, many organizations are jumping on board for that to provide that opportunity for that area. And it's something that I think we talk about a lot on this program. And I think a lot of arts organizations talk about is this idea of collaboration. But unfortunately, when it gets down to it, we're not great at doing it. But like, here are two examples of, organizations that are, or programs that are being done because organizations are willing to partner together.
Well, right. And she even says, towards the end of the discussion about the teaching artist training, that the part 2 or the next steps of it are really like a labor of love. Like, there's, it's still not really a part of the way anybody is necessarily doing business, and there's not necessarily funding behind it. Right. But it's like, we know we need to do it. We know we need to partner. And at this point, right, like with that program, it's really like making it work stage.
Well, and I think it's also one of those things that just will pay dividends like down the road. Where like it might not pay off immediately, but it's gonna have a huge impact down the road.
I'm really glad that this conversation went that way, because I've built my entire career on collaboration and partnerships, and that's everywhere I've gone. That's where I've made my successes. And of course, I can always do more and do better. And I think Kara brought in some new ideas that are now rattling around in my brain. And I'm definitely going to be following what she's doing, as well as seeing if we can get involved in some of those things too.
I know I said this in the interview, but when Kara first told me about this regional multi-organization teaching artist training, it really blew my mind. Like, working in an arts education organization that trained teaching artists, that the teaching artist was, what it is that we did, right? Like, they were everything about the organization. They were the best part about it. That's what we talked about when we fundraised and when we sold services and when we did all this stuff. And the training was so proprietary, right? It was hours, and it was, week long, this intensive. And to think about merging that with any other organization, let alone an entire city's worth, just like, it really seems like you would need a pandemic in order to kind of get that get that kind of collaboration going. But it totally makes sense, because the underlying work of a teaching artist, the classroom management, the stuff that you have to do in your own finances, is universal across all programs. And just because somebody works for your organization doesn't mean that they can't also fit in the model of another organization. And I didn't even think about it, like, I've never worked anywhere that summer camp was like a major part of the operation, but like, teaching summer camp is wildly different than teaching classroom residencies. And those two things happen at very different points of the year. And like, creating that network so that artists have work in your area for the entire year is what we should be working towards.
Yeah, and I think we can expand that beyond just artists, because I remember, I took an administrative track and got my business degree. And then later on in college, I was given a technical theater class to teach, and I had to come up with the curriculum and everything myself. And to the point about, Kara was thinking how she wasn't expecting to come out and become a teaching artist as an option for her. And then that track kind of changed for her. So I love that she's formalizing that in an artist perspective. But again, I think across the industry, and we can do better in that. And luckily, I am seeing programs like when I was going to college, a lot of the performing arts programs, despite what track you were doing on stage, backstage, whatever, they were focused on just the skills and the job. And luckily, having worked in academia for the last 7 years and talking to a lot of colleagues, about these programs, and I see that they've become more holistic in teaching personal finances and teaching the business perspectives, how to negotiate, not just the skills of how to perform on your instrument or whatever it might be. But part of that is also there's classes about how to teach. So even if they're not pursuing to be a teaching artist or being a teacher for future artists, they're learning the skills to teach as well as whatever else they're pursuing. So I think it's a good direction that we're going in, because it only helps all of us and makes everyone stronger in that way.
I do think one of the other things that I want to bring back is this concept of teen ticks. And I know it's not something that they started, but it's sort of a program that they're adopting from another location and, bringing to the KC area. It's something I would love to see more organizations do. And honestly, I will end up looking into doing something like it, whether it's through that organization or just through something that, we build internally, because I think that that's an important offering to the community, is offering a lower price ticket or a specialized event for teens to get them in the door. And sometimes it's just, giving them an opportunity or giving them some people to go see a show with. And so I think it's great. And I think that more people should be doing it.
And I think too, that day of model really works because, how often are we seeing anybody buying tickets more than a week ahead, right? I mean, it's not a huge proportion of our audience, and it's certainly not the younger proportion of our audience. And so like really using that unsold seats and putting, the younger people in the community in them, like there's, even if the ticketing fee to use that service is $3 and you're only making like $2 on a ticket, like you're investing in your future.
Correct. Yeah. You're building that audience.
The more shows and the more organizations that are contributing to that. And it's like when somebody goes to check it, if there's options on there, the more they want to return to it. And it's just working. It's such a great example of how working together, like rising tides lift all boats.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting about that is that day of model is, you sort of touched on it, Danielle, is the younger demographics are really like going that way of like buying things last minute, especially for shows. We were talking to some folks who college age, and it's like, how are you getting your information? And it's like, oh, I just, pop on Facebook or something, like just look up like what's happening near me like that day. So they're looking at events that are going like that specific day. And I'm like, oh, that is, for me, that's like, I can't.
Yeah.
Back in my day, I remember when I first started it, that everybody would talk about how everybody waits till the last minute nowadays. They wait till 2 weeks out, and now it's still last minute, but it's literally the day of. Like, oh, what do I feel like? I feel like going out tonight. What's going on? And I have to admit, in my old age, I've done that myself. I've been someplace and I'm like, oh, what's going on here tonight?
Oh yeah. As much as I'll like sit here and be like, oh, it's tough that people wait until the last minute now. Like, do I search what's going on near me for kids almost every weekend? Yes.
Yeah, but it's the other people that should be buying earlier, not us. Like,
well, it's the Katie Millers of the world that have things planned out a year in advance.
Yeah.
Because look, you got to have time for that check to cash.
I went to a major corporate store today that would not take a check that somebody had written for me.
Shocked.
It's a whole thing. They would not take the check that I brought.
Shocking.
It's the first time I handled a check in 10 years.
Is there a very specific Katie point that you would like to pretend to be Katie for?
I'm so happy to hear about another kick-ass woman in the arts. Our field seems to have a higher percentage than others. That's all. That's my personal opinion. And I'm glad we're lifting them up.
Oh man, thank you for that. Almost died.
The Katie impression was spot on.
I don't think she said that, but I think that's something she could say.
Yeah. No, it was perfect. It sounded just like her.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. And one of the things that like I hate to like keep being like, well, if it weren't for the pandemic, but Kara is one of those people that I met on the Zooms in the pandemic. And then once I met her in real life, it was like, yes, this is a colleague for life. Thank God for the Zooms. And so I hope everybody enjoyed also getting to know Kara. And we will see you next week. And I said see you, and I meant it. Because why? Engagement on social media. I would like to see you see our posts and like them, because we are bringing joy.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Brian Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.
I thought you were threatening to come to their house. So,
I mean, if they'll pay for the airfare. Kevin, is that a pickle pen?
it's just a pickle. It's not a pen. It's just a ceramic pickle.
Didn't we have an inside joke about apple pickles or something? I can't remember now what that was.
Yeah.
That's so long ago.
Long. It was like long
Apple-shaped
apples, but it
pickle?
became. But it was something about a pickle shaped. I don't know.
Yeah.
Apple-shaped
We'll have to
pickle.
go back and listen in our archives.
Yeah.
Pickle-shaped.